Thanks for joining me for a podcast extra. This is Jennifer Fortune. She is a licensed mental health counselor here at Coastal Counseling.
That's right.
And Jacksonville Beach. And I'm very excited to ask you a billion questions about love, about marriage. We're in the Valentine's Day season. I did talk with a couple that I mentioned to you, the Blankies. 70 years they've been married.
Shocking.
How do you do that? And I know that's a wide open question, but first things that come to mind, good grief, you said it's shocking.
Absolutely. I mean, what an achievement, 70 years. That would be definitely unusual, but it totally gives me hope. But what I would say is for most relationships that go beyond even the 20-year mark, which is a pretty nice average these days, what determines a long-term relationship more than anything is that both people choose to stay together. It's a decision that they make, that this is the person I'm going to be with no matter what happens. They have each other's back. And then I guess the second part of that is the part that brought them together, the staying engaged. You know, from that decision, they make a daily decision to somehow demonstrate that that other person in their lives matters to them. And so there's all sorts of ways that people do that. And I imagine for your couple, they probably had a lot to share with us about, you know, how they stay together through all of the many stressors that life brings, and that the relationship continues to be sort of a refuge for them.
You said a whole lot of things there, but you're right. One of the things that they did mention was that they are friends. That was like the first thing they said, that they're friends. So, and I'm thinking about my best friend and, you know, all of the effort that goes into just calling and texting and checking in and, hey, what's going on?
Yeah.
So it sounds like you're saying that has to be done every day.
Absolutely.
That's a lot of work.
Absolutely. In fact, I really get couples' attention whenever they say, you know, what do we need to be doing more of? And I said, well, you know, you need to make love every day. And that really gets their attention right there.
Yeah.
But what I'm referring to is less about intimacy and romance, but more about, you know, making each other matter every day. And so seeing love as more of a verb, more of an action. You know, what am I doing for this person today? And it might be as simple as the way we greet each other, the names we call each other, you know, those sort of sweet endearments that we have for each other, the way we practice humor in our relationship, that we flirt with each other is very important. Letting the other person know that they still see you. You know, so there's all these many ways that become sort of a daily ritual that is the rhythm of a relationship. And the relationships that last have more of those.
And which kind of takes the pressure off, because you're not saying you have to go out and buy something every day, like buy flowers or buy this or make dinner reservations every weekend. There are little things that can be done.
The little things go a long way. And that gives a lot of people hope, because it's like that ripple in the pond that just gets bigger and bigger. One little thing can have a big, big difference in the relationship.
So let me ask you, I was looking online, doing my research before I came to see you. According to divorce.com, which has compiled data from the CDC and Pew Research, first marriages last 8 to 9 years on average, second marriages 7 to 10 years, third marriages 5 to 8 years. I hear that. That doesn't sound like a long time at all.
Yeah, it sounds kind of scary, like why do we bother? But keep in mind where, you know, you hear the statistic, regardless of where the research comes from, that 1 out of 2 marriages won't last in general. But you know what? There's second marriages, there's third marriages. There's something about us human beings, the perseverance in there, that we keep trying. And you know, that is the root of survival, is that we need each other. We need that sense of belonging. As, you know, as bonding mammals, we need to couple and companion with one another. And that's part of our survival. And so we're really hardwired to keep looking for mates when something doesn't work out.
So when people get to the point where they're coming to see you for marriage counseling. What are some of these issues? And I would imagine a lot of people, this may resonate with them. So what are you finding? You've been doing this for how long?
I've been in private practice since 2012, but I've been doing this sort of therapy for about 18 years. And I've seen a lot of things. What people most report to come to see me for is help with communication.
Wow.
And which is not surprising, how we talk about things, how we encounter and confront difficult transitions that happen in every relationship. And it's important that we have those conversations, and we're not all raised to know how to do conflict. In some families, conflict is avoided. In some families, conflict is real big and real loud, and then you get two people from two different sort of cultural histories together, and how they manage to have those conversations can be real tricky. So they usually want some help with how they keep getting into these patterns or impasses and how to break through that and grow and be stronger.
So I'm a little confused, because by the time you get married, you've had you've communicated to get to that point.
Absolutely.
So where's the breakdown? What happens?
That's a great question. If you think about it this way, we kind of go from being maybe invitational to becoming more accusatory over time with the difficult topics. And so when you first meet someone, you're open-minded, you're talking about everything, you give each other the benefit of the doubt, you're very curious. And then over time, as you get more familiar with each other and all of that sort of novelty sort of wears off and you get more comfortable and more familiar, the conversations change sometimes, and we sometimes assume we know our partners. We know what they're going to say, or we know what they're going to do, and the way we approach them is very different. And we get into these sort of patterns. Usually when people come to me and they need help with communication, they're usually having conflicts about the same things over and over again. And it's really not about what they're fighting about, it's how they're fighting. It's the manner and approach they have to these conversations. Some people, like I was saying with, the way we grow up, some people get into conversations, and when it gets uncomfortable, it escalates into something that's too big to handle emotionally. And then some people just want to avoid difficult conversations altogether. And so, my job is to help them identify the pattern or dance they've gotten into, and where they can earlier in that stage identify what's happening and change the how rather than the what, if that makes sense.
Oh, yes, it does. Yes, you're giving them the tools to notice as they're going down that argument road,
right,
the markers that
exactly.
show, hey, look, this is where I need to maybe think differently and use these other words instead of. So that makes total sense. And you mentioned communication. That was on my list. And there was something else I wanted to ask you about. When it comes to getting married, so I'm from up north, New Jersey. When I grew up, everybody was getting married older. So I got married older. I was in my 30s. But I moved down here to Florida, and I noticed people get married much younger than where I'm from.
Sure.
Does age matter? The Belankes, for example, 70 years, they got married super young. They've been together forever.
Absolutely. And there are those exceptions, and so, the answer is yes and no. The yes part might be, with age, there's wisdom. We know ourselves better. We know what we want better. We can identify our needs better. And so coupling a little bit later when you're more established and kind of have developed your identity can be very helpful. But at the same time, it's really about emotional maturity too. And so There are a lot of people who really are self-aware at the age of 15 years old. I'm not advocating that, but
Thank
you
you,
know,
'cause my
they
daughter's
start very
15.
young.
I'm like, oh, no. But yes.
You know, so it's really more about, you know, how mature and secure a person is, that they're ready to enter into the vulnerability that's required in a relationship as you work through stressors.
So you get married young, you are ready, everything is right, you're emotionally ready, mentally ready, but over time you change, you develop, you know, so how do you help someone who they were on the same page before, but then all of a sudden, you know, you change. So what do you do then?
Absolutely, and I wish there was a really simple answer to that. But, you know, the truth is, you know, we're changing all the time. Our relationship is changing in concert with that. And then life deals you all kinds of things. You know, people who decide that they don't want to have children sometimes get pregnant. People have children. People have blended families. So there's a lot of different things that become factors on the relationship. But one thing that I would say that I think is really important is with relationships, of course, going back to the fact that we're like bonding mammals, is that attachment is important. And so with that initial phase of the development of the relationship, we have found someone we're attracted to, we attach to them, we decide we're going to be together, it's my job to help them sort of reclaim that and see where they've let go of the priority of the relationship. Life has so many distractions. You know, with our personal devices, with our growth of our careers, if we have children, they each have needs within the relationship. So helping the couple kind of identify all the factors that have gotten in the way of making the relationship a priority is an important part of that. When you put that together with helping them have the conversations, you can help them get out of those patterns that weren't working and back into something that is more cohesive.
Okay. All right. Next topic. Did communication? Oh, we're going to stick with communication. Fighting. Is there a right and wrong way to have a fight? You're going to have disagreements.
You are.
And I'll tell you, I'm an escalator, and my husband's a shut downer.
And that is not uncommon.
And so, you know, we literally go in our separate corners and then come back and regroup. And I come down here and he opens up. And so we're you know, we figured that part out. But is there a right way to fight?
Absolutely.
And I hate using the word fight because it sounds so bad, but it happens.
Conflict, yeah.
Discuss. I don't know.
Absolutely. And for some couples, it is fighting. You know, I went to a conference some years ago and they put couples, kind of like your couple, up on the stage. And the thing they had in common, these were couples from all kinds of different backgrounds. But the thing they had in common was that they had all been together for at least 50 years, which today, again, is not all that common. And so we were there to pick their brains and find out about the relationships and all of the things that had helped them through that. And one of the things we learned is that some people fight throughout their relationship, and that's not a bad thing. It's how they do it. And so, yes, there are ways to deal with conflict, and conflict is healthy. It's a good part of the relationship. You're two different people. Of course, you're going to think differently. But the fact that you have figured out a way, as you've done, to get together and know each other's different patterns and respect those patterns is the important part. If your partner gets overwhelmed during the course of the conflict and they need to take a break, that you let them have the break, because we both go into fight or flight. And so one of us wants to keep talking and one of us needs to take a beat. And when you figure out how you are individually and you can respect that, then you can come together and meet each other in common ground and discuss what you need to. But conflicts are good. It is about more of the how than the what.
I like that word respect, because no matter how much you think you're right, as long as you respect the way they are and their reactions and their thought process,
Yes.
you can still get your point across, but you're showing that you're hearing that other person.
Absolutely.
Got it.
Absolutely.
Got it. I'm taking notes.
Yeah.
Money. I'm guessing that's a big deal. Now, this is very interesting. So my parents did something where I think it was my mom's money. She was a teacher, dad was a cop. So her money went away and they used his money to live on. So they were able,
Interesting.
yeah, so that's what they decided to do. Now, my husband and I got married super late, 30s, 40s.
Sure.
And so we already had our separate bills. So we just kind of came into it like that. And then, we have like our little joint money, but we have mostly separate. So what is the main issue that people have when it comes to money? I mean, this works for us. It doesn't work for everybody that way.
Sure.
So what are you finding? What are you hearing?
Well, in terms of when it becomes a problem, it's because it was never discussed. We have value systems attached to money that we grow up with, depending on how money was handled in our families or how we earned money, and then how we come into a relationship. So, it might be the young couple both starting up, building a life together, or it might be a couple who's already had a life together and this is a second or third marriage and they're coming with assets. And, prenuptials are very popular today and necessary in some cases. And so when a couple gets together, if they fail to discuss how that part of the relationship is going to be handled, and then they get married, or they're just moving in together, or some other nature of how they decide to partner up, it usually becomes a source of conflict if they're not on the same page. And we all have different relationships in that regard with what money means, if it means a sense of power in the relationship, or it's just about behavior and spending, that one person, spends differently than where another person values saving more. So those can be sources of conflict. And again, it's not about what they're doing, it's more about how they're talking about it and addressing it.
So if that is a situation, because I've heard that a lot among friends, is that, she spends so much on this, or he's going out with the guys and spending money on that. So what are some things that you tell people to do when the spending habits are different?
Well, we begin talking about what those things mean for each person and trying to get beyond just the hard details into the emotions that are under that spending. Like, what is it that you're really buying? What are you really needing? Trying to get beyond the purchases to what kind of need is looking to be fulfilled, and get them talking about needs more than just about finances.
So give me an example. I'm not sure I understand.
Sure. And so, one person in a relationship might have come from a background where being secure later in life is really important. So they may place a lot of emotional investment into saving and spending wisely, according to their own philosophy. And, somebody else might have grown up in a household where there were adequate funds. And so money was a way of loving. And so you come into a relationship where one person finds loving is saving and one person finds loving is spending, and then you've got a conflict there. And what we really want to be talking about is less about where the dollars are going, but more about what the behavior means, what's underlying that need.
Mm-hmm. And I'm hearing the next step. I'm thinking compromise is always discussed, right?
Always, yes. Because in a relationship, we're both there, and that both positions are respected and validated.
All right.
In a healthy relationship.
Here's another one. I'm trying to jam a whole lot into this, so if I don't mean to cut you off.
Okay, I could talk all day long.
Extended family.
Yes.
So, and everybody has a story. So,
Yes.
When we decided to get married, my husband's mom, his father was already deceased, but my husband's mom totally accepted me, no issues whatsoever. My parents tried everything they could to keep us from getting married. But, after we got married, I mean,
Yeah.
my husband's now like the best thing since sliced bread,
course.
according to my parents. But that was a really trying time. Unfortunately, we didn't have the issues that a lot of people had where, our folks were in New Jersey, New York, and we're here in Florida.
Right.
There are a lot of people whose in-laws are right there.
Right there in your relationship.
And in your relationship. So how much does family play into a marriage? You've got a
Sure.
couple over here. So how much does the extended family, do you find, is into that marriage?
Absolutely. And there can be cultural differences with that as well, too. A lot of cultures really value, the role of the marriage being an extension of the extended family, and that, deserves attention. But I would say that for each person, it's going to be a little bit different. If someone grew up in a family where the family system was more problematic or dysfunctional, sometimes the person in the relationship needs protection from their family. They need help with boundaries, with family. And then another person can come from a very warm and connected, secure family bond, and they want their family to be part of their marriage. And so that's like money. That's one of those conversations. And you usually find those things out early in the dating process of how close someone is to their family and how important those family members are.
Have you seen that that's a deciding factor in marriage or not marriage?
It certainly should be, because after you're together, getting someone to cut off a mom, a dad, or a sibling is really an unfair ask after the fact.
Wow. Okay. I never thought that would be a deal breaker, but
It can be. It can
interesting. Okay.
be. Yeah.
What do you think, and you mentioned it earlier, what do you think about prenups? In my mind, and old school, as soon as you say it, it's like, I feel like the words are giving up before you even start. So
true.
So what is that? How do you approach that? And how do you feel about that, seeing what you've seen with couples using them or not using them?
Absolutely. I mean, anytime someone's going into any kind of agreement in a legal aspect, it's almost like you're going in with the knowledge, and we're all admitting, like, this might not last. And while statistically speaking, there's a chance that it might not last, and that's just, a reasonable expectation. It's not very romantic, is it?
No. It's like talking about end-of-life stuff. It's not... You don't want to do it.
Absolutely, absolutely. But at the same time, it's not uncommon today for people to be in second or third marriages, and maybe there's been a trust or some sort of asset built to protect children. And sometimes those things are necessary. Sometimes someone's assets are tied to a family business. And so there may be something else that has to be protected. And, that varies from state to state and family to family. So it's not very romantic. It's
how do you help
it's
somebody?
Something that's hard to talk about, but oftentimes it's a necessary step. Goes hand in hand with talking about money and talking about family and what's going to be part of this long-term relationship. And again, the more we talk about the things that are the most important things, and that should be in the beginning. When we're dating, one of the questions that someone should be asking their partner is, tell me what's important to you.
And that brings me to another topic. I've got a couple more questions.
Okay.
But what do you think about premarital counseling? My husband and I, we were older, but we decided to do premarital counseling just to make sure we were on the same page. And the man who married us was Bishop George Davis. He oversees Impact Church in the Arlington Regency area. And literally we had packets to fill out. Like, we talked about money. We talked about what happens about in-laws when they get older. What are you going to do? Do you have a plan?
Sure.
We talked about health. Have you disclosed to the other person everything about your health? I mean, it was exhausting. Like, I had to go take a nap after. But all these things we talked about were like a lot of stuff we didn't. But a lot of people don't like the idea of premarital counseling. They're like, why am I going to have somebody else tell me what to do when they don't know us? So what do you think about that?
Well, I'm always for anything that's proactive when it comes to therapy. You know, fortunately today with social media and with so many different things we've been exposed to that have kind of destigmatized the idea of therapy. Therapy is seen today much more positively as a way to build wellness rather than treat problems, you know. So I would say, you know, going hand in hand with that, premarital counseling, I highly recommend, because it does give you that platform, that safe place upon which to like discuss some things that might be difficult to discuss. And so having a professional there to kind of help you both stay safe in those discussions can be really, really helpful.
Yeah, it was kind of crazy because when he asked, what are you going to do with your in-laws? We were like, I don't know.
Do we have to talk about that?
So, but yes. What is one of the, and I don't want to say craziest, but one of the most intense or, you know, cases that you've had, one of the most intense cases that somebody has come to you with for help?
Yes, well, of course, I have to maintain confidentiality always, but just giving you kind of in concept the type of case that would be the most challenging is when a couple encounters some kind of life-changing event, such as the loss of a child or some kind of health event that has a long-term you know, that requires long-term care or long-term attention on the relationship, such as someone going into recovery. That can change a relationship, which is why 12-step programs offer Al-Anon for the family member, because they know that's a life-changing event on the relationship, and it's something that's going to be with the relationship for a long time. But anytime there is that kind of life-changing event that wasn't present when both people got together, it wasn't part of the initial contract, it may have been loosely built into for better or for worse, but you don't really know how you'll handle those things until they happen.
And so you have found that those type of humongous events
Can be deal breakers, and that's when people will come for help. I mean, people are usually coming with those kind of situations because they've tried to deal with it on their own, and it's either being ignored or they're not able to talk about it in a way that's healing.
Are breaks okay? Breaks from each other. Guys trip. Girls trip.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it depends on the break. I would say, you know,
like,
yeah,
yes,
like
but
if I need an hour, if I need a day, absolutely within a relationship. Again, because conflict is very, very normal. But what you're talking about with like taking separate vacations and that sort of thing, those kinds of breaks, or even taking a separation in the relationship, you know, in a healthy, secure relationship, those kinds of events are often encouraged by each member to take separate vacations or time to yourself. Having your own interests is very healthy. With my business, most clients that are coming to me are not in that stage. They're usually coming because they're having some kind of upset to maybe the sense of trust and security in the relationship. So then you're speaking more of like taking a break within conflict just to kind of take care of emotions and that sort of thing, which is highly encouraged.
Last question for you. Is every marriage salvageable? Can you help every marriage?
Oh, I wish I could. Unfortunately, you know, many people finally come to therapy when they've tried everything else. And there are some situations that, you know, coming to therapy is like that last stop to say that we've done everything that we can, and you can't salvage everything. It's got to be a choice. Both people have to be 100% committed, and then they have to be making the relationship a priority, sometimes above everything else, while they heal through a strong life event.
Jennifer Fortune, thank you so much for that
You're welcome,
free
Joy.
advice.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure.